You know Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, the wisecracking superhero, the guy who finally got his franchise after years of rom-coms. But here's what most people don't realize. Acting isn't how Ryan Reynolds got rich. Ryan Reynolds made more money from selling a gin brand and a budget phone company than from every movie he has ever acted in, combined. And the strategy he used to do it? It's something most celebrities would never think of. Ask anyone how Ryan Reynolds got rich, and they'll say Deadpool. And they're not wrong. The Deadpool franchise has grossed over $1.5 billion worldwide. Reynolds commands $20 million per film and took home a substantial back-end deal on those movies. By Hollywood standards, he's done extremely well. But here's what that story misses. His entire acting career, everything from Two Guys and a Girl to Deadpool to Free Guy, has made him roughly $150 million. That's over 2 decades of work. That's a lot of money. His business exits? Over $400 million from just 2 deals. Acting isn't Ryan Reynolds' wealth engine. It's his marketing tool. His real business is converting fame into equity. And by 2025, that business model has generated a net worth estimated between $350 million and $600 million. 75% of it has nothing to do with acting. This is the story of how an actor became one of the smartest marketers in Hollywood, and how he did it by breaking every rule in the celebrity playbook. The turning point for Reynolds wasn't a success. It was a disaster. 2011, Green Lantern, a $200 million superhero movie that flopped so hard it nearly ended his career as a leading man. The film was critically panned, barely broke even at the box office, and became a punchline in Hollywood. But Reynolds didn't just learn that the movie failed. He learned why it failed. In a later interview, he recalled sitting on set, watching the studio burn millions of dollars on special effects while completely neglecting the script. He suggested to the executives, "We could write a scene in the movie where people actually talk to each other. It doesn't cost anything." Their response? 2 words. Just spectacle. They poured money into CGI. They hired the biggest names. They threw resources at every problem. And they produced a movie with too much budget and not enough story. Reynolds watched it all happen in real time. And here's what he realized. Too much money, too much time, wrecks creativity. It just murders it. Constraint is the greatest creative tool you could possibly have. That lesson, that constraint breeds better results than unlimited resources, would become the foundation of everything he built next. Fast forward to 2016. Reynolds finally gets Deadpool made. But the studio slashes his budget to $58 million, less than a third of what Green Lantern cost. Most actors would have complained. Reynolds did the opposite. He used the Green Lantern lesson. He replaced expensive set pieces with character-driven scenes. He replaced million-dollar billboards with leaked test footage that went viral for free. He turned the budget constraint into a marketing advantage, positioning Deadpool as the scrappy underdog fighting against big-budget superhero movies. The result? Deadpool made $782 million on a $58 million budget. One of the highest ROI films in modern Hollywood. But more importantly, Reynolds learned something that would change his entire approach to business. You don't need the biggest budget. You need the best story. And if you can manufacture attention cheaply, you can create value out of thin air. That's when he stopped thinking like an actor and started thinking like an owner. By 2018, Reynolds had formed Maximum Effort, a marketing agency built on one core principle: speed. Traditional ad agencies take 6 to 9 months to launch a campaign. Committees, approvals, focus groups, revisions. By the time an ad launches, the cultural moment has passed. Reynolds built Maximum Effort to operate on a 24 to 72-hour timeline. He called it Fastvertising, advertising at the speed of culture. Here's how it worked in practice. December 2019, Peloton releases a holiday commercial. A husband gives his wife a Peloton bike. The internet immediately explodes, calling the ad sexist, dystopian, and uncomfortable. Peloton's stock drops 6% in a single day. Most brands would have stayed quiet, maybe issued a corporate statement, waited for the controversy to blow over. Reynolds? He tracked down the actress from the Peloton ad, Monica Ruiz. Within 36 hours, he had written a script, assembled a crew, filmed a response ad, and released it for Aviation Gin, the spirits company he had just bought a stake in. The ad opens on Monica at a bar, staring into space, looking traumatized. Reynolds tweeted it with the caption, "Exercise bike not included." The ad went viral instantly, millions of views overnight, major media coverage, and it cost a fraction of a standard TV commercial. That's Fastvertising. Hijack the cultural conversation before it fades. Move while everyone else is still scheduling meetings, but speed alone doesn't explain Reynolds' returns. The second piece of his strategy is even more important. Most celebrities approach business the traditional way. A brand pays them $5 million to hold a bottle in a magazine ad. They show up for a photo shoot, they post on Instagram, they collect their check, and they move on. Reynolds realized that model is leaving massive amounts of money on the table. Because when you take a fee, you capture none of the value your fame creates. The moment the contract ends, the revenue stops. You're renting out your brand. You're not building wealth, you're just collecting paychecks. So Reynolds changed the deal structure. Instead of taking endorsement fees, he takes equity. He buys significant ownership stakes in companies and then uses his fame and his marketing agency to multiply their value. He doesn't just put his face on the product, he becomes the chief marketing officer. He trades creative labor for ownership. This is the sweat equity model, and it's the difference between making $5 million and making $300 million. Here's how that played out across his portfolio. Aviation Gin. In 2018, Reynolds bought a minority stake in Aviation Gin for an estimated $2 to $5 million. Not just as an investor, as an owner and creative director. Most celebrity spirits deals are straightforward endorsements. Show up at events, post on social media, maybe do a commercial. Reynolds did something different. He managed his own company email address, and he set up an automated out-of-office reply that was a 6-paragraph comedic essay. One version read, "While my own father may be gone, the unspoken tension we shared is alive and well. This Father's Day, you may not be able to give Dad a second chance, but you can give him a bottle of Aviation American Gin." People started emailing him just to get the rejection message. Screenshots went viral. Free advertising worth millions. He filmed low-budget ads where he openly mocked the idea of celebrity alcohol brands. He made fun of himself for selling gin. And that transparency, that willingness to break the fourth wall and acknowledge he was selling you something, built more trust than any aspirational lifestyle campaign ever could. 2 years later, 2020, Diageo, the massive spirits conglomerate behind Johnny Walker and Tanqueray, bought Aviation Gin for $610 million, $335 million up front, $275 million in potential earnouts. Reynolds' take? Approximately $90 million when accounting for the earnouts. That's roughly an 18 to 45 times return in 2 years on gin. But Reynolds wasn't done. Mint Mobile. In 2019, Reynolds bought an approximately 25% stake in Mint Mobile, a budget wireless carrier that operates as an MVNO, renting network space from T-Mobile. Mint Mobile was functional. It worked. The service was fine. But the marketing was generic. They were competing in one of the most commoditized, boring industries in America, cell phone plans. And that's exactly why Reynolds bought in. He calls this strategy boring industry arbitrage. Most celebrities want to invest in sexy industries. Fashion, restaurants, tech startups. The problem? Those industries are already saturated with great marketing. The bar is incredibly high. Reynolds targets industries where the marketing bar is incredibly low. Gin, telecom. Industries where every other brand is running forgettable, corporate ads. So he bought into Mint Mobile and became their chief marketing officer. He replaced their generic ads with videos of him standing in front of a green screen, explaining how much money Mint Mobile saved by not filming expensive commercials. The joke was the ad itself. Low budget, self-aware, transparent about being an ad. One Super Bowl spot cost Mint Mobile less than $500 to produce. Reynolds just stood there and read copy off a teleprompter, making fun of Super Bowl ads while running a Super Bowl ad. The approach worked. Mint Mobile's subscriber base exploded. The brand became cool in a category where cool wasn't supposed to exist. And in 2023, T-Mobile acquired Mint Mobile for $1.35 billion, 39% cash, 61% stock. Reynolds cut? Approximately $300 million, $131 million in cash, $205 million in T-Mobile stock. That's a 30 to 60 times return on his initial investment from a budget phone company. Then there's Wrexham. In 2020, Reynolds and actor Rob McElhenney bought Wrexham AFC, a fifth-tier Welsh football club, for £2 million. Split between them, Reynolds paid roughly £1 million. Most people thought it was a publicity stunt, a vanity project, rich Americans buying a soccer team for fun. It wasn't. Reynolds and McElhenney documented the entire turnaround in a show called Welcome to Wrexham. They invested in the team, they invested in the stadium, and they invested in something most owners ignore: the community itself. Wrexham isn't just a team, it's the identity of a working-class Welsh town that had been beaten down for decades. The show captured that. Fans who had supported the club through relegations and financial collapse suddenly had owners who cared. The emotional core of the documentary wasn't Reynolds and McElhenney, it was the fans who finally had hope, and that authenticity translated into commercial value. By 2025, Wrexham's valuation, following an investment from Apollo Sports Capital, reached £350 million. Reynolds' share? Approximately $175 million in paper value. That's an 87 times return on a soccer team most Americans had never heard of. Now let's be honest about what didn't work. Nuvei, a payments company Reynolds invested in, went private in 2024 for $6.3 billion. On paper, that sounds like a win. But the stock had stagnated and Reynolds likely saw a flat or minimal return. Not every bet hits. And there's the It Ends With Us situation in 2024. Reynolds and his wife, Blake Lively, produced the film. A story about domestic violence. They marketed it with the same cheeky, self-aware, maximum effort tone they use for Deadpool and Jin. The internet called it tone-deaf. Critics said the Deadpool humor approach doesn't work for serious topics. And they were right. Not every strategy works in every context. And let's acknowledge the obvious. Reynolds started with advantages most people don't have. 50 million followers, A-list access to deals, capital to invest, the recognition that opens doors. The strategy is learnable. The starting position isn't. But here's what makes Reynolds different from other celebrity entrepreneurs. Compare him to George Clooney with Casamigos Tequila. Clooney sold the aspirational lifestyle. Drinking like Clooney, looking like Clooney. It worked. Billion-dollar exit to Diageo. But it only works if you're George Clooney. The model requires his level of charm and cool. Ashton Kutcher took a different route. Sound Ventures invested early in Uber, Airbnb, Spotify. Kutcher's a venture capitalist who happens to be famous. But he's not the face of those brands. He's a check writer who picked winners. He didn't manufacture the growth. Reynolds does something neither of them do. He buys working products, not broken startups. He takes an operational role, not just board observer status. And he manufactures the growth himself through content. He's not just investing capital, he's investing creative labor. He's the CMO, the spokesperson, the content engine, and the equity holder. That's the model, and that's why his returns are different. So what can you actually take from this? 3 things. First, constraint breeds creativity. Reynolds' best marketing didn't come from big budgets. It came from having no budget. The Deadpool campaign, the Mint Mobile ads, the Peloton response. All cheap, all effective. You don't need money, you need better ideas. Second, own, don't rent. Whenever possible, trade your skills for equity, not just a paycheck. Reynolds could have taken $5 million endorsement fees for gin and phones. He took ownership stakes instead. That's the difference between $5 million and $300 million. Third, speed is a moat. If you can move in 36 hours while your competitors take 6 months, you can hijack the conversation for free. Fastvertising works because most brands are structurally incapable of moving that fast. Speed creates opportunity. What you can't replicate? The 50 million followers, the face recognition, the access to deal flow. But the principles? Those work at any scale. You don't need to be Ryan Reynolds to understand that fame is a depreciating asset, and that the only way to capture its value is to convert it into something that compounds. So, no, Ryan Reynolds isn't rich because he played Deadpool. He's rich because he understood something most celebrities don't. Fame expires. Equity compounds. The acting career? That's the commercial for the real business. And now you know what the real business is.